It's good to have you with us at this hour. I'm Daniel Chen for Arirang News. Let's start with the headlines. The embattled floor leader of the ruling Saenuri Party calls it quits. Yoo Seong-min says he could have done so earlier but chose to stand up to the mounting pressure against him in order to defend the values of a democratic republic. Statistics Korea reports the nation's total population should peak in 2030 and then go on a downward trend in the following years. What's most concerning is that by the year 2060, 2 out of 5 people could be over the age of 65. Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras tests creditors' patience further, this time by showing up at the Eurozone summit in Brussels empty-handed. Greece is given till Sunday to submit a conclusive proposal for reforms. After weeks of pressure from the presidential office and his own party to resign, ruling Saenuri Party floor leader Yoo Seong-min finally relents. He steps down from his post following a general meeting called by party leaders. Our National Assembly correspondent Park Ji-won starts us off.
In tendering his resignation on Wednesday, Yoo Seong-min apologized to the public for disappointing them and causing confusion within the party. But he said he had stayed in the post to defend the values of a democratic republic, which could be read as a jab at the presidential office and those who had pressured him to step down.
The law, principles, justice, these precious values stemming from Article 1 of the Constitution, which states that Korea is a democratic republic, are what I wanted to protect, even at the risk of my political career.
He resigned after accepting the result of a general meeting on the matter called by the party earlier in the day. Party lawmakers finally reached a consensus after hours of discussion, and the decision was made after a full debate, not a vote, to minimize the potential for further internal conflict. The final call to end the debate was made by party leader Kim Moo-sung.
We've heard enough from our lawmakers at the meeting, and I am now going to inform Yoo Seong-min of the result.
The ruling party's Supreme Council said it had convened a meeting to end the continuing strife between the president and the floor leader. The conflict began when President Park vetoed a revision to the National Assembly Act late last month, which she criticized Yoo for spearheading. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party lambasted the result, calling it a shameful moment in Korea's political history. They blamed the presidential office for the current deadlock at the assembly and for creating the rift within the ruling party. In commenting on Yoo's resignation, presidential office spokesperson Min Kyung-wook expressed a wish for good relations with the ruling party down the road, but declined to comment further. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Staying in local politics, the main opposition party has reintroduced a bill containing revisions to the National Assembly law, which President Park Geun-hye co-signed back in 1998 when she was a lawmaker. The opposition argues the old revisions are no different from the recent ones, which the president vetoed. In a recent veto, she said giving the parliament the power to request changes to government ordinances could be unconstitutional. The party also named the bill after the president, drawing the ire of the presidential office. It said a day it would be inappropriate to name a bill after the president and that the two revisions are fundamentally different, as the old revisions recognize the government's discretionary power. The National Assembly's Judiciary Committee has given its approval to the Justice Minister nominee, sending the nomination on to the next level. The committee said Wednesday, Kim Hyun-woong has received a favorable evaluation from the legal community and his humble character has helped him to serve in his post within the prosecution and the Justice Ministry. However, they also expressed the concern that Kim, who currently serves as the head of the Seoul High Prosecutor's Office, may not be able to function apart from the prosecution. President Park has urged officials to fully support the new Secretary General of the United Nations Maritime Agency and seek ways to expand Korea's role within the international body. Thanking Im Gi-taek, who will head the International Maritime Organization starting next January, for elevating Korea's status as a leading maritime nation, she cited his competence in the field and international recognition as reasons for his election. Im is currently the president of Busan Port Authority and has spent his entire career in the maritime sector. The IMO is a UN agency responsible for the safety and security of shipping and the prevention of marine pollution by ships. North Korea has threatened to cancel the planned visit to Pyongyang by former South Korean First Lady Lee Heeho if Seoul continues its provocations. The warning comes 2 days after the North gave its permission to allow the widow of former late President Kim Dae-jung to fly to Pyongyang in early August for a 4-day trip. The regime's Korean Asia-Pacific Peace Committee said in a statement Wednesday, the South Korean media is launching provocations by saying that Pyongyang is politicizing Lee's trip. The committee said the approval for her visit is tentative and warned Seoul could blow the opportunity if it continues its provocations. More from North Korea. Less than an hour ago, North Korea sent a warning message to Seoul that South Korea returned all 5 North Korean crewmen who were rescued by the Coast Guard on Wednesday. Pyongyang added that it will take firm action should Seoul continue to, quote, detain its crewmen. 3 of the crewmen expressed a desire to defect, while the other 2 asked to return to the north. More from the Hermit Kingdom. North Korean leader Kim Jongun paid tribute to his grandfather and North Korean founder Kim Il-sung on this Wednesday to commemorate the 21st anniversary of his death. The state-run Korean Central News Agency said the young leader visited the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun at midnight, where the late founder was laid to rest in the year 1994. Kim was accompanied by senior military officials, including Hwang Byung-seo, the co-director of the General Political Department of the Korean People's Army, and Park Yong-sik, who is believed to be the regime's new defense chief. The anniversary comes amid reports that the young leader's so-called politics of fear is leading to a growing number of defections by mid-ranking officials. On to the latest turn of events in the nation's MERS situation. South Korea reported its first MERS deaths in just over a week, meaning the country isn't out of the woods just yet where the virus is concerned. However, the health ministry attributed the deaths to pre-existing conditions and old age. Our Kim Yeon-bin gives us the updates.
2 people died from MERS on Wednesday, raising the death toll to 35. The health ministry said Wednesday that 2 people had been in what it deemed a high-risk group. They were the first deaths from the disease in 8 days. One of the deceased was a 50-year-old with a pre-existing condition, while the other was a person in his 70s who was at risk because of his old age. The ministry added that of the 35 deaths from the disease so far, 32 had been elderly people or people with pre-existing conditions such as diabetes and cancer, which apparently worsened because of the virus. On a more positive note, there have been no new infections reported over the past 3 days, leaving the total number of people diagnosed with the disease at 186. Of that, 32 remain hospitalized, while 119 have been discharged following full recoveries. Since the MERS outbreak on May 20th, over 16,500 people have been put into isolation for possible infection. Roughly 15,800 people have been released so far, after not showing any symptoms of the disease during its 14-day incubation period, placing the number of people still under quarantine at 811. MERS was first reported in Saudi Arabia in 2012 and had a fatality rate of 40% until the outbreak in Korea. With the latest deaths, the fatality rate of MERS in Korea has risen to a little less than 19%. There's no vaccine or cure for the disease. Kim Yeon-bin, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, in line with recent predictions, Korea is about to undergo a massive demographic shift in the coming years. Analysts expect to see the population age and its workforce shrink. Our Connie Kim tells us about the possible implications for the economy and the country.
Korea currently has the 27th largest population in the world, but that number is expected to slip to 49th by 2060. Statistics Korea said Wednesday the Korean population, currently at 51 million, will reach its peak in the next 15 years, jumping by about 1 million. And then it'll decline, going down to as low as 44 million by 2060. The agency expects the elderly population to increase by more than 3 times in the coming years, while the working age population will decrease by nearly 50%. The agency attributes the shift to the chronically low birth rate and rapidly aging society, with experts expressing concern that the decrease in the number of young people will have a negative effect on the workforce.
The decrease in the workforce will dent the country's growth rate. At the same time, it's going to burden the younger generation, as they will have to shoulder the cost of the rise in the aging population.
Similarly, the Hyundai Research Institute predicts a rise in the aging population will cause the growth rate to fall, and it puts the figure in the 0% range by 2060. And to resolve the problem, the Korea Development Institute says society and the government must work together to find ways to support the elderly while seeking new growth engines for the economy. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Moving over to the latest developments in Greek debt crisis, Greece failed to submit any fresh bailout proposals to an emergency summit of Eurozone leaders on Tuesday, leaving the country in limbo once again. The Eurozone leaders, who are now running out of patience, have fixed the final deadline for Athens to submit its final proposal. Our Handaun has the details on the debt-ridden country's puzzling moves.
Greece's Eurozone partners have called a full European Union summit on Sunday while giving Greece an ultimatum. Come up with a concrete reform proposal by Thursday or risk the alternative, bankruptcy or a possible exit from the Eurozone. The move came as Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras showed up to a Eurozone summit held in Brussels on Tuesday without a new aid proposal, disappointing the already skeptical Eurozone partners. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, before and after the meeting, reiterated that Greece still has not met the basic requirements for further negotiations. She also made clear that she won't write down any of its debts.
The challenge for Sunday will be to see if the conditions are in place for taking up negotiations. Yes or no, no more, no less. There definitely won't be a haircut. This would be a bailout in the currency union, and this is not allowed.
Sunday's meeting could decide the debt-ridden country's fate, as the EU leaders of 28 nations are expected to make a final decision on whether to approve a third bailout for Greece based on its new proposal. The Greek leader sounded rather upbeat after Tuesday's meeting and said that the discussion had taken place in a positive climate. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, who has sought to keep Greece in the euro, was more cautious.
The Commission is prepared for everything. We have a Grexit scenario prepared in detail. We have a scenario as far as humanitarian aid is concerned. And we have, and that's the scenario I most prefer, a scenario how to deal with the problem now, keeping Greece as a member of the euro area. I'm strongly against Grexit, but I can't prevent it if the Greek government is not doing what we are expecting the Greek government to do.
Greek banks remain closed while capital controls are still in place, and experts say the emergency measures are likely to last longer than what the Greek government has previously announced. Handaun, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund has urged the U.S. Federal Reserve to postpone its planned interest hike until 2016. It says there are political and economic issues globally that could hurt U.S. growth, adding that a rise should only come after signs of wage or price inflation. Our Kim Min-ji has this report.
The IMF has warned the U.S. Federal Reserve to keep its rate increase on hold until next year. In its annual analysis of the U.S. economy, the IMF said a global slowdown in economic growth, together with political and economic upheaval in countries like Greece and Ukraine, could hurt U.S. growth down the road. It said a rate hike should be put off until there are signs of a pickup in wages and inflation. Analysts have forecast a rate increase in September, although recent economic data had watered down expectations.
Many analysts have projected a rate hike in September, but if the Greek debt crisis is not resolved and continues on, it will have a significant impact on Europe and the US. So there's a chance that the Fed could possibly postpone the rate hike.
The IMF suggested holding rates at near zero into the first half of next year, with a gradual increase after that. The Fed has held the rate at near zero since the global financial crisis in 2008. Fed Chairwoman Janet Yellen had earlier signaled the central bank could raise rates in the coming months if the economy was growing steadily. But the world's largest economy only expanded 0.7% in the first quarter, and growth projections for the whole year aren't all that better. The IMF has cut its growth forecast for the U.S. economy to 2.5%, down from April's 3% projection. The OECD has also revised down its outlook to 2%. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The U.S. Army is reportedly planning to reduce the size of its fighting force by 40,000 troops over the next 2 years. USA Today reported on Tuesday that the Army also plans to cut its civilian employees by 17,000. The cut will downsize active duty troops from the current 490,000 to 450,000, the smallest number since 1940. The cost-cutting plan has been on the table for some time, but this is the first time officials have confirmed it will go ahead. An official announcement on the specific units affected could come as early as Thursday. Citing military sources in Washington, Seoul-based Yonhap News says U.S. troop numbers in South Korea, however, will remain the same. The Korean Air Force opened the country's first space monitoring center on Wednesday. The Air Force said the center, located at its headquarters in Gaeryong, Chungcheongnam-do Province, will help Korea better prepare for emergencies in outer space. It will also help the Korean military track satellites operated by other world powers. The center will receive real-time information from the U.S. Strategic Command in charge of space surveillance after the two countries agreed to share cosmic data back in September. The surveillance center is part of Korea's plan to beef up its military capabilities in outer space by the year 2040. We've come to the end of this newscast. We'll have more coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time, so do join us then. For now, thank you for watching.